Okay, so hi, this is the very first episode of my channel, and it's called The Examined Life. And the topic of my channel is pretty much going to be narcissistic abuse and recovering from it, as well as examining that you have been abused in the first place. A lot of people don't realize that they've been in abusive relationships because they've been so had their realities distorted that they didn't realize that they were being manipulated. So I'm going to be talking about my own experiences with narcissistic people and abusive people, and how I came to the awareness of it, because I hadn't always thought that that was the way it is. That was my normal, I guess you could say. That, dealing with abusive people, and I had become abusive myself because that was all that was modeled for me, and I didn't realize that I had choices. And that was a big thing for me, that is that I didn't realize that I had choices in terms of how people treated me. And it was, an eye-opening experience when I realized that my father was a narcissist, and possibly my mother too. I tend to think she's she's not as high on the spectrum of narcissistic behavior as my father is, but but my mom kind of woke up to his stuff, and so she stopped being his enabler, and then the relationship kind of fizzled at that point. But they're still actually married, but they're kind of estranged. And but I want to say that this channel is going to be looking specifically. I don't want to say specifically because I'm gonna bring in other things too. But I would like to let you know that a lot of what I'm going to be talking about will also address narcissistic therapists and people who work in the helping or health field, like psychologists and social workers and things like that. Because I have definitely met narcissistic people who had the narcissistic characteristics within those professions, and it's basically where it took me a long time to realize it, but basically when they work in those professions, then they choose to go into those professions, it's because they don't want to look at themselves. They would rather help you deal with whatever you're doing, but they don't want to look at themselves. Or maybe sometimes they're vicariously thinking they can heal themselves through you. That's what I'm thinking, But it's really an interesting examination of the people. I had one therapist for 7 years, and I had no idea that she was a narcissist until recently. Based on because I was just totally gaslighted. She totally gaslighted me about a lot of things. And I didn't realize that she was as much of a sham as she is. And what can I say? There were others too, in terms of social workers who were acting as therapists and things like that. And to say that, and to let you know that the therapy or the structure of the psychological professions and stuff like that, if you look at the way that the structure is kind of set up, it is narcissistic in its own right. And, it's very hard, I guess, for people who kind of go in there with this intention of helping others, and then when they start to see it, not everybody, they leave the profession. The ones who really see it for what it is and who realize that there's a lot of politics going on, they leave the profession. And then the ones that are getting coddled and enabled, they stay and they take advantage of the system. But yeah, that's one thing about this channel I hope is going to be a lot different than a lot of the other ones that are out there. And because I understand that definitely a lot of you out there are coming out of narcissistic personal marriages, relationships, friendships, whatever, work I definitely I had two narcissistic bosses at the same time. In two different jobs. I was working part-time at another place and had a full-time job. And the one at the full-time job, she was a total, you know, one of those on wheels, you know what I mean? So I will go into her big time. And as I break down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus in on those characteristics that narcissists are about, and I will give you examples of from my own life and my own experience, so that you can see that you're not alone. And if you ever see things that, like that in your own life, you'll realize that those things are abusive. And at the time when I was going through them, I didn't realize that it was abusive. And my father, sadly enough, he conditioned me, to put up with that kind of stuff. And when I look back on it, 2020 hindsight, and my examining my life, that it was, I finally saw the conditioning, how I was conditioned to put up with that type of abuse. And that my putting up with as much abuse that I did, my father used to say, when things get tough, you need to, you don't run away, and it builds character. And that's true. I'm not saying that it's not true. But there's a big difference between overcoming adversity versus overcoming abuse. A flat out abuse that doesn't need to be there. If you know what I mean. An example. If someone had gotten cancer, okay, and it's a struggle, going through treatment and all of that kind of thing, and that's adversity. And that's, and you overcome and you build character from that. Or going through a job training that's very tough, that builds character, and you get the ending of you went through the criterion and you stuck it out and you got through it. That definitely builds character. Now, that's much different than if you have people who are literally trying to sabotage you, who are being abusive, verbally abusive, demeaning, just to create discomfort and unhappiness, to go out of their way to do that. And for you to persevere against that when it doesn't necessarily need to be there and shouldn't be there. Bullying, things like that. Those things don't need to be there. And the fact that we have to feel like, oh, well, I'm overcoming that. And whereas they're not being held accountable for their stuff, while other people like us need to be are being held accountable for the minutest things by these people, and making our lives unpleasant with their micromanaging and stuff. Hey, it definitely double standards all the way. So I'll be talking about those kinds of things too on this channel. And I want to let you know that this channel is partly for my own healing. I mentioned, I guess, early on that I am a life coach, a certified life coach. But I'm also a survivor of narcissistic abuse. I'm not totally out of narcissistic relationships, because I have to take care of my elderly parents, and my father is kind of going downhill. But I'm there for that purpose. As far as narcissistic relationships, yeah, I had those too. Love relationships and things like that. So I'll go into it. Friendships also, I noticed, it wasn't until retrospect that I noticed that I was attracting narcissistic friends also. So it's not I totally get it. And sadly, I have to say that I had acquired narcissistic traits of my own. Because again, as I said, I thought that's what normal is. That they taught me what normal is, and I went along with it. And it wasn't until I realized that I wasn't having healthy relationships, and I wanted to do things differently. And doing things differently, I'll give you actually on an upcoming video, I'm going to talk about a particular person who was totally flat out narcissistic. Okay, but I give her a few points. I give her points for looking at certain things about herself that she doesn't want to look at. Okay, and I think that she was probably she was incredibly manipulative, but everything had to be done on her terms. Let's put it that way. And if you told her something that she didn't want to hear, she would try to condescend to you. In other words, she'd put you down. But I'm not saying that my intention, if my feedback to her was in any way meant to be harmful, okay? But it was her way of coping with the situation by becoming condescending. So, anyways, I'll talk to you on the next video then, and thank you. Please subscribe to my channel. Please leave comments if you wish. And I hope you come along with me on this interesting journey. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.